Basement, level vibes with another one, straight up, blackness aye. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up my family. Turn on the radio, catch the vibes, it's integrity. Straight up, Benskop stands for unity. One people, one nation, one destiny. Free up the truth in the air, even the blind can see. The deaf can hear, the dumb can talk, the cripple can walk. Boom. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, we have to gather wrong, grab a seat and sit down, pay attention. Education, liberation, we have to stand strong. Benskop upon the radio, lively up the program. Everybody call somebody and let them turn and tune and on the radio and catch the boom song. We boom it up already, we have to boom it up again. Expose and reveal them. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop.
Hello, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
Source. Okay, well, maybe the Chinese company that did not get the agreement that they wanted here, maybe they're the ones who told you, or it could be just a fictitious thing.
Okay, well, let's talk about specific individuals. What is your relationship with Mr. Sujiro?
My relationship.
Pressure, boss pipe.
Making the short video for send to you and the viewers and listeners. All know we punishing in Guyana. Punishing. Rice gone up, sugar gone up, flour gone up, cost of living just gone up, gas gone up from 3,400 to 3,800. Real hungry days under this installed PPP government. Real hungry days we gone back to. Guyanese, oh, real hungry days, real hungry days.
Good evening, real hungry days. So true, real hungry days under the People's Progressive Party. The installed regime, the corrupt, the racist regime, that is what they're about. And a lot of them are on the watch list, you know. I'm talking about the U.S. watch list, law enforcement agencies, and I'm sure the Canadians also watching them. Remember, it was Air Finale who was blocked from going to Canada, blocked. No government or no country is just going to wake up one morning, go to bed, wake up, and decide that they're going to block someone from entering their country. There must be a reason behind that. There is a reason behind that. Irfan Ali has promised to tell the nation about that reason, why the Canadians stopped him from going to Canada. It's not because they just decided because of his name Mohammed, because you know his first name is Muhammad, right? And nothing is wrong with that, mind you. Mohammed Irfan Ali. I don't know why he doesn't like using the name Muhammad. He prefers to be called Irfan Ali. But he's Mohammed Irfan Ali. The Canadians blocked him from going to Canada. They still have him on that watch list. But they've decided to flex a little since he was installed as the president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. They've relaxed it a little bit. It doesn't mean that they're done with it. But I'm quite sure that they were investigating him. They were watching him. I don't know what they were watching him for. I'm not sure if it's money laundering. I don't know. And I'm not going to give my mouth liberty to say anything other than the fact that they're watching him. He has promised to tell you guys. He never did. I wonder why. I honestly wonder why he never mentioned anything at all. But again, we back to square one, where a lot of so-called businessmen in Guyana are on the U.S. watch list, U.S. law enforcement agencies watch list. Some of them are given contracts, hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts. I don't know. I just don't know. But keep an eye out. Keep an eye out. Look, right away we start with this guy, Rick Singh. Let's go straight to Rick Singh. Rick Singh, namaste, good evening, and welcome to Straight Up. We're glad that you're listening, but please understand, when you listen, you must understand what you're saying. I am saying, Rick Singh, this is not propaganda. This is not a propaganda show. Rick Singh, the Canadians stopped Irfan Ali from going to Canada. Just stopped him from going to Canada. Not because they didn't like him because of his first name, Mohammed. No. Absolutely not. Had nothing to do with that, but had more to do with something they were investigating. I just said that, Rick. Oh, Rick, don't embarrass me, man. I know you look like you get on a nurse uniform. Don't embarrass the profession, man. I'm assuming that you're a nurse, and nothing is wrong being a nurse. But listen carefully. They stopped him. They blocked him from going to Canada. And the only reason that they have allowed him, you can say he went to Canada. He come to Canada twice. That doesn't say anything. They have relaxed that investigation. They have relaxed it. He's now an installed president, and so they've relaxed it. It doesn't mean that they're done with it, Rick. So he can go Canada 3, 4, 5, 6 times. It doesn't mean, Rick, you let me down, man. Oh, Rick. I know you want to say something. You let me down. You let me down. Let us bring our guest on. We are expecting veteran trade unionist Lincoln Lewis to join us. Lincoln is having some technical difficulties. I don't know why, but Dr. David Hines is with us. He is no stranger. And I didn't want to get the gentleman to wait because he was backstage. He left, he got drink a cup of water, he come back, he got people through the window, perceived the PPP looking at him, all manner of things. He's drinking juice now. He's drinking juice. Dr. David Hines. Good evening to you, sir. How are you?
Good evening, my brother. It's been quite a while.
It's been quite a while, and it's really good to have you on this show this evening. How have you been, sir, to begin with?
Well, busy, I just got back from Guyana, and as you know, I was down there for a series of public meetings by the Working People's Alliance, and you know what that has caused in our country. So I just got back and trying to get back with the swing of things here.
All right, so glad that you're able to get back to the swing of things. Lots of things swinging. Lots and lots of things are swinging. Lots of things are not swinging well in Guyana under the installed, corrupt, racist PPP regime. They want to silence everyone. They want to shut everyone up. And we've got to stand up and ensure that they just don't take away our rights, our democratic rights for peaceful protest, our democratic rights for freedom of speech, etc., etc., etc. We will get into that shortly. But let me ask you with regards to this latest development and the PPP. People cannot protest now. The minute they protest, this is what they're doing to people. Driving fear, of course. People protesting is act of terrorism now, Dr. David Hines. Talk a little bit about it, please.
Well, as far as the PPP is concerned, this young lady that you have up on the screen here, she was, of course, quite active during the Quindon Bacchus protests following his murder. And I saw this woman organizing prayer meetings, organizing food for people who came out for the protests. And apparently that has become a crime because she's now charged for terrorism. Apparently it's now terrorism now includes organizing people against a murder. And as I said, I frequented Golden Grove quite regularly, and I saw this sister working her butt off. And she wasn't terrorizing anybody. You know, she was, like I said, arranging food to be cooked for protesters. She was out there arranging prayer meetings. She was out there candlelight vigils. This is what I know this young lady was doing. And now they've charged her for terrorism. So it seems that under the PPP, terrorism has a different meaning than other parts of the world. And it is this kind of lawlessness that we in the WPA said last week that has to come to an end. And we have given the government notice, we have cautioned them and said, you've got to stop this nonsense. And failure to stop it, there will be consequences. We felt that we had to put our lives and liberty on the line because they're threatening to lock us up. But we had to, as a political party with a name, we felt that as small a party as we are, we had to find a big voice and to caution these crooks and to tell them, if you continue down this path, there shall be serious consequences. And to speak to our brothers and sisters in the army directly. Because without the army and the police, the PPP will crumble. All they will have left are some vigilantes. But without the army and the police to assault the dignity and the liberty of opposition supporters, the PPP will crumble. And that is what my brother Ogunse was saying. And so we felt we had to talk directly to the policemen and the army and to tell them, not only must they uphold the Constitution, not only must they uphold the rule of law, but they also must recognize that they are Black. Most of them are Black, they're Africans, and it's an ancestral and cultural sin to turn your guns against your own people when they're in conflict with a government that is oppressing them because of their race.
You know, Dr. Hines, I recalled this was sometime back in 2000, 2001. The very sentiments were being echoed when I hosted a show on Channel 9, which you're aware. And the Black Clothes Police, they were rampant. They were out there executing mainly young Black men without any stoppage. It seems as though, of course, at the time, it was Commissioner of Police Larry Lewis. And the PPP gave them that green light under Jack Dale. The PPP doesn't care about young Black men or Black people in general. Forget about a few that they pick up and give them little crumbs to eat and umbrella to walk around with and hold and so forth. Forget about them. They are the minority. But it was the same thing they were doing, using the police force, using the military to operate with phantom squad, killing squads and these sort of things. They were doing that. It is no secret. We recall what happened at Lindo Creek, when it is alleged that certain senior military officers were part of that killing squad that allegedly executed several minors and attempted to put the blame on men who were wanted. People still remember that. And so I remember those days when the Black Clothes Police, and I'm sure you do, and lots of other people do, because it was just a few of us who were there in Guyana, and we should be joined by Brother Lincoln Lewis as well. A few of us who were there to stand up against Jack Dale, against the PPP, and against the Black Clothes. But I recall echoing very words on that station, Channel 9, that what if the police, because we were getting fed up of the extrajudicial killings by the police, what if the police were to turn their weapons in the direction of Larry Lewis? I say this to remind those who don't know that several days after, Larry Lewis caused me, along with the PPP, they caused me to be charged with conspiracy to commit murder. They've lost the case. They don't care whether they lose it or not, but it is to drive fear. What do you suppose? Because I get to this here. The PPP is now saying that the law will take its course. This idiotic individual, Ben, says of WPA's seditious statements, the law will take its course. What is so seditious about what Ogunsi said?
Well, the PPP has to answer what is seditious about what Ogunsi says. And I am very clear in my mind that they are fearful. They are fearful not about what Ogunsi said. They are fearful about what Ogunsi has put on the table and put in the public domain. And that is that what is at stake here is a government that is bent on brutalizing its citizens, especially those who did not vote for them, especially those of and the opposite ethnic group, and that they wanted the police and the army to give them cover. And that's what Ogunse has said to the police and the army: you have to stop giving them cover. And so when you take away something that people are benefiting from, they behave like the way they're behaving. And what we have removed from them is this automatic belief that the police and the army will shoot down black people. Well, we are saying to the police and the army that you belong to our community and you have got to come back to our community. And you ought not to be pointing your guns at people in your own community. That there is life after the PPP. There is life after the PPP. And it's in our communities. You have to come and you have to hang out with people in our communities. You have to borrow things from people in our communities you don't have. And when you're in trouble, it's the people in our communities you want to come to your aid. And so therefore, we have spoken directly to our people. We don't want the police and the army to fight for us. We don't want the military coup, because when police and army take power, they keep the power for themselves, right? What we want for them to do is to turn your guns away from your sisters and your brothers.
So
and
what is wrong? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
And this is nothing new with the PPP. These sentiments have been echoed before. I just gave you an example, and lots of other folks have echoed that sentiment maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe longer than that as well. But what is really wrong with that saying to the police, addressing members of the Guyana Police Force and the Guyana Defense Force to say, take a second look, guys. Understand that you're being used by a puppet regime to carry out their illegal biddings. And be careful as to how you turn your guns and how you pull that trigger against innocent citizens. Do not do it. What is it that the PPP is afraid of people, particularly African people, who are faced with the brunt of this brutality, talk directly to the armed forces? Why are they so panicky? Because Jack Dale has spoken in derogatory terms against the military and the police. He basically called them hooligans.
Yes.
He called them criminals.
Yes.
He called them condoning and being part of kick down the door banditry and all manner of things. Jack Dale, did that to the military, but yet it was acceptable for them. But here it is that there are folks who are talking conscious talk in order to open the eyes of those guys in the joint services. What is so wrong about that? And what exactly is the PPP afraid of, sir?
And what they are afraid of is the protection that potentially is being removed from them. It is the protection. They depend on the police and the army to protect them when they do their wickedness. And what we have done is potentially pull that protection from off of them. That's why they're so vehement, Mark. It's not they know that Ogunse has not committed any treason or any terrorism or any sedition. They know what sedition is. They know what sedition is. And they know who's a seditioner.
And they know what treason is because several of their members, including serving members of the Guyana police force, the late Balram Singh and others, were part of a treasonous act. They were caught with weapons. Attempting and admitted that they were attempting to overthrow the Desmond Hoyt administration. Those individuals were charged with treason. When the PPP got into office in 1992, after they served 2 years or so or a year plus in prison, guess what? The PPP freed them. When the PPP freed them, Balram Singh went back into the police force. There was another member of the Guyana Defense Force that the PPP used for treasonous act. Balram Prasad, died now. He and I became a little close, and so he told me some stories. And of course, the treasonous charges were actually on point. Unlike some fictitious charges with a bullhorn, these guys had weapons. They had guns, the Chicken Rohans, and all of these guys, Dr. Hines, to overthrow the Desmond Hoyt regime. So these vagabonds in the PPP know all well about sedition, they know all well about treason, and they know all well about giving away the country, because it is Jack Dale who promised to make a deal with Venezuela to give away a piece of Essequibo. But continue, Dr. Hines, you're my guest.
Yes, you're quite right. I agree completely with what you're saying. And so therefore they know that Brother Ogunse has not committed treason or libel or sedition or anything. What he has done is that he has potentially taken away the cover from them. They're now wondering what will happen when they call on the police force and the army to go and shoot down black people. They're wondering what will happen because we have brought it out. And that is what they're fearful. They're fearful of the cover, the protection being potentially taken away from them.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Hopefully we'll be joined by veteran trade unionist Lincoln Lewis shortly via phone. I want to get his 2 cents as well. Here's what the PPP has been doing over the years. If you look around the country, they have a lot of these so-called security agencies. They deliberately and strategically set that up so that they can have more weapons in the hands of these so-called security firms. In the event that the police and the army decide that they're not going to do the bidding of this illegal regime. So they have all these illegal security firms, some of them so pompous to walk into a police station and beat up people and chase out police and all these manner of things. Read between the lines what is happening there. Your take on these so-called security agencies with guns that are bigger and more sophisticated than the police and the army. sir.
Yes, you Mark, you know political history, and you know that in 1957-64, Dr. Jagan said he was in office but not in power. So when they came back in 1992, they wanted to make sure they are in office and in power. And the strategy militarily is to be able to control the leadership of the armed forces and to create these vigilante groups that you spoke of there just now. And so they have created what I would call parallel security forces. So capture the leadership of the traditional security forces and then create parallel security forces to protect you. Now, why do you need all that protection if you're a democratic government acting democratically? No, you know exactly what you're doing. You know that you're engaged in autocracy. And of course, we are accustomed to autocratic government in Guyana, in the Caribbean, so that is nothing new. What is new is the linkage of authoritarianism with ethnic racial domination. Ethnic racial domination and autocratic rule within the context of oil wealth becomes a dangerous weapon against the opponents in Guyana. Let me repeat it. Autocracy plus ethnic domination within the context of oil wealth becomes a dangerous brew for Guyana.
And dangerous weapon indeed, because they will try to use all of the billions of dollars to stay into power and to suppress individuals who stand up and speak out against them. The evidence is quite clear. We recall the days of the Phantom Squad, the killing squads in Guyana, when it was the PPP and even one man who later was convicted in a U.S. court, Roger Khan, boasted in a paper that he basically had to take on the work of the police and the army and so forth. So the evidence is quite clear. We are not sitting here talking propaganda. And when the Surinamese, under the security of the National Security Minister then, Santokhi, who is now the president of Suriname, Santokhi decided that he was going to grab Roger Khan and allow Roger Khan to be extradited to the U.S. You know, somebody was vociferous about that. Somebody was against that. And it was then one of the founders of the PPP, Janet Jagan, who publicly said that she was against that extradition and she was against what Suriname was doing and so forth. She never spoke out about these things, but she felt compelled to speak out about what the Surinamese were doing to Roger Khan to extradite him, being the head of a Phantom Squad, responsible for the deaths of so many citizens and the disappearance of so many citizens that they cannot be found today. But the PPP embraced the Roger Khan because they weren't confident with the police force and the army. They weren't confident because they weren't able to corrupt as many of them in the police force and in the army. Again, you're my guest, Dr. David Hines. Take it from there.
Yes, and you know, it's what Professor Clive Thomas called the criminalization of the state, in which the state of Guyana became fused with the criminal underground.
Narco economics, narco state.
Right.
He wrote several articles in the Guyana Stabroek News about narco state because it was narco money that was funding the regime. They were depending on narco money. They were allowing the cocaine to slip through the country in rice, in sugar, in tamarbal, in pulori, in mitai, you name it, under the PPP regime. But Dr. Hines, continue.
Yes, and you have some people, some of our Indian brothers and sisters, I think are so misguided, are saying, them rich Indian where you see that they get their money because they have to work hard. Well, you just said it there. You just said it there, how that new bourgeoisie under the PPP, where their money came from. Now, of course, they're Indian businessmen and women, Indian merchants, who have made their money legitimately. They got help from the government, but the money was made legitimately. But then we had that new class of quote-unquote businessmen who were created during that period.
Overnight. They
Yes.
didn't earn. Some of them just appeared just like that, and they're so filthy rich, and they want to let people know that they are legitimate businessmen. They dress up in tight-fitting suit that make them look so awkward. They run around pretending to be philanthropists and all these other stuff. A lot of them are wanted by U.S. law enforcement agencies, mind you, right? And like one person said earlier, with regards to Irfan Ali not being able to go to Canada, let me remind them that there's a United Nations or a Geneva Convention that allows head of state to go freely into a country without any sort of humbug. And so Mohammed Irfan Ali is allowed to go to Canada because, quote unquote, he's an installed head of state. He's an installed head of state, Dr. Hines. Let us go straight to Lincoln Lewis. He's on the phone right now. Mr. Lewis, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Mark. How do you do?
Quite well, thank you. We have Dr. David Hines here with us. Sorry that you couldn't join us via the StreamYard link. But how have you been, sir?
I am doing better. You know, I was supposed to be on the video last night, but I went back.
Yeah.
And I got stuck with that traffic around Grove area for a long time. You know.
So, in other words, in other words, Lincoln, you're using my platform to apologize to David. Go ahead.
No, I'm not using my platform. Your platform. I've already communicated with you.
I suspect that you have. I suspect that you have, Lincoln. But Lincoln, describe the state of the country right now. What is happening in Guyana? All these threats and oppressions and suppressions and so forth by these illegitimate folks in the regime. What's happening there, sir?
Basically, I'm glad that you've asked me that question. Basically, what the government is doing is tactically shifting the focus from them to other persons. And I hope that we don't get caught up in that. We're with them who are involved in what I consider over the years to be economic genocide against the African community. I hope that we're not giving them an opportunity to run away from it.
Let me just pause you for a minute, please, Mr. Lewis, or Comrade Lewis, as you prefer to be called. And let me ask folks, are you guys hearing Lincoln loud and clear? Let me get some, let me just get a gauge as to whether folks are hearing you loud and clear. David, are you hearing Lincoln loud and clear?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, sir. It seems Roberto Gonzalez, G1 Bundari, see, all of them are saying yes, they're hearing Lincoln loud and clear. Lincoln was just talking about the term coined economic genocide. And I recall that back in 2004, you started this talk about economic genocide. And back in 2004, the PPP regime, through the Ethnic Relations Committee, wanted to drag you through the Ethnic Relations Committee to talk about your term economic genocide. I'm sure you remember that, but continue, sir.
Yes, let me say to you that you know, we have to go back. We have to understand how these people behave. We are now in a process, in a haste, where they are transferring the wealth of the country to a specific group, a cabal in this country. They get all the security contract, they get the medical supplies, supply of pharmaceutical in this country and other medical equipment and so on. They get that. That's one of the biggest budgets. Even as you look at education, what these guys have done is to starve the University of Guyana of the needed funds to optimize the services at the university, both at Tain and at Turkine. You know, for years now we have a situation where It was on the drawing board for a campus in Linden, for a mining campus to mining and forestry. Look at those things. They're not looking at those things when it comes to education. We have no what we call the gold scholarship, right? They're funneling the money to their friends at other universities or other universities where they can get kickbacks. And the people who are doing it, who are responsible for that, they are questionable characters, and they're intent over the years of being questioned, right? You are seeing now, for instance, all the time on the road to Diamond, the prime spots are now taken up by some specific business. Those businesses are the friends of the government. While they are doing all these type of things, the small man, the ordinary man, they are telling them that from the resources of oil and gas, we can't get what we call direct cash transfer. They will give you when they get it. Those are some of the things that are happening. And let me tell you, Mark.
Stick a pin there, please, Lincoln. Please remember that point. Stick a pin. Dr. Hines, I'll bring you in now. Ethnic Relations Committee urged to address Lewis' economic genocide statement. This was back in 2004. We saw then, as we are seeing now, they use these agencies, particularly the Ethnic Relations Committee that they controlled, to basically oppress and to suppress the voices of the people. We saw what happened to Lincoln back in 2004 with this economic genocide that the PPP committed then, and they are committing now. Your take on this, sir?
Yes, it's the consistent way of trampling on your civil liberties. And they do so under the cover of the law. You heard Ben today. He said we have courts, we have parliaments, and if people have problems with the government, they should go to the courts and the parliament and so on.
Yeah, but they don't practice what they preach. Wasn't it Ben who was protesting and going on and throwing himself down on the ground and all these things? Wasn't it the same Ben? Why didn't he utilize the courts then? Why didn't he utilize the parliament then? But go ahead, Doc.
Yes, and this is what these people do. They hide behind this thing of democracy, and they carry out vicious attacks on people behind this wall of democracy. And we have to tear that wall down. We have to tear that fictitious wall down and expose them to the people. And if it means that some of us will have to face the music, we will do. But we have to make sure that there are consequences when they lock people up. And that is what we have been saying to the society, that you have to stand up. You can't cower in fear, because that's what they're doing. They use the Ethnic Relations Committee back then to frighten Lincoln. They are using the police trump-up charges now to frighten people away, whether people are GCOM. They want to clean GCOM out so they can put their people. So they charge people at GCOM 3 years later. The cases cannot be completed. They charge people for terrorism. For the next 2-3 years, we're going to have those charges there on people. What they're doing, they're criminalizing people. And at some point, the society has to say, enough is enough.
It's got to stop. Enough is enough.
There must be consequences.
Let's go to this statement here by Diane Ramnarine. Good night, Ben Scott and Mr. Hines. Please spell my name correctly if you're going to address me. And Mr. Hines is not like Mr. Sam Hines. It's Dr. Hines. He has a legitimate PhD. Just so I remind you, Diane. But here is what Diane is saying. I'm sorry, I got to say this. Have you noticed the gentrification of our beloved city, Georgetown? It does not look like GT anymore. The old timers being pushed out. Now, let me say this to you, Diane. Lots of money laundering happening right now. We see some buildings going up. Ask yourself where they're getting the monies from. But you would not want to ask yourself that question. You would want to admit that prior to the coalition getting into office, the city, Georgetown, was known as the garbage capital of the world under the PPP. Jack Dale and them. Filthy. Oh, yes. The garbage capital. Thanks to the coalition government for cleaning that city up and making it a city that is acceptable worldwide. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, Diane. Back to Lincoln Lewis. Lincoln, recently you wrote, and I quote, in the Village Voice, and folks should pick up a copy of the Village Voice. No country has been freed from oppression without the oppressed themselves being directly involved and in the forefront. Explain this, please.
Let me say to you that you can talk from now to the cows come home. The oppressors, the government, will not see the point that you are making unless you take resolute action against them. They will never, the oppressor never accept that he's oppressing people. The slave masters never accept that slavery was wrong.
The apartheid regime in South Africa never accepted that they were doing wrong, just like the mini apartheid regime in Guyana.
Even until now, they don't believe that what they did was wrong, right? But I'm going to tell you something, that one of the things that happen is that we have to be more clever in our struggle. We can't fight like before. These guys, let me give you an example. When yourself, Mark, and myself, when we went to picket the commissioner of police,
Henry Green's office.
Yes, about our water debt, and the case has now been brought up, where we were calling for justice for him. They attack us. I went in the trench. You know, I told you the night in the lockup, I told you that, hey, I was waiting for the policeman who would have come in the fence. I would have hold him around his neck and duck him about 4 or 5 times and say, help me, to send a message to him, right? We have to be different. We got now the police is so fearful that they will want to shoot us down. But when they want to shoot us down, we have to find ways and means of being smarter than them. Let me tell you, you, Mark, you with a Laudela will lock you away for 5 years. You lost your family all the time. You may have come out, you have recouped, right? But you lost 5 years of the time of your life. And they could not have found you guilty at any point. So they trump up when they called some pardon. They're pardoning you for a crime that something that you've never been found guilty of. So they pardon you, right? You have had Army Green, who they tried with immediately after you. Then they caught Oliver and they locked Oliver for some time. They take Waddle. When Waddle stood up, they killed Waddle. Right? Now they lock us up. You and me and all of us get locked up and after. And every place that you can for a period of time, every area you go, they find some reason to lock you up. I mean, you went in all the lockups on the coastline.
And but thank you for reminding me of that. Borbies, Linden, Bartica, across the river, Port Dryne, you name it, all over, and from treason to sedition to all these charges that they leveled against me. I'm not sure that anybody holds that record, but it's not something to be ashamed of. They're all political, treason, sedition, You just name it. Dr. David Hines, back to you. What Lincoln is saying and what this oppressive regime is doing, and the fact that citizens must not be fearful. They must be able to stand up for their democratic rights. They must be able to speak out. They must be able to protest without being labeled as a terrorist. And if the PPP regime wants to talk about terrorists, we just have to remind them about what happened in Bad. And not only what happened in Bath Settlement, before I bring you back, Dr. David Hines, what Irfan Ali himself and others, including the man who sits there as the installed Speaker of the House. And yet these folks, these PPP vagabonds, have the audacity to describe people as terrorists and hooligans and vagabonds. Look, the evidence is there. I don't see the people whom they have issued wanted bulletins and have charged them for acts of terrorism. We have seen the evidence of acts of terrorism, and it's coming from the PPP. We heard violence being instigated by who? None other than this guy.
Right across Guyana, when the ministers of Granger or Nagamutu come here after the 21st of March, you say to them, walk behind them, chase them out, they're going to be illegal. Say to them, you're illegal. Free up the...
Walk behind them, chase them out. That is violence. The court has not ruled any regime or any government illegal. If in fact he wants to say that after March, the AP and UFC will be illegal, what about this PPP regime? They are illegal. So what if we say people should walk behind them, chase them out? Dr. Hines, come on, your turn, sir.
Yes, and that is why we have to mobilize our people. That's the only way out of this thing. You see, we have talked a lot for the last 3 years, and I think we had to talk. We had to make the case. We had to expose what they're doing. And so for 3 years, we've been doing that. And the time has come now for us to tackle the central issues. Now, fear is a normal human emotion. If you live in a society in which people or the government is prepared to use the might of the state against you, of course, that's going to drive fear in you. Now, it is up to the political leaders, your representatives, to help to decrease that fear. And you decrease fear by the leaders being brave. Leaders have to be brave. If the leaders just run around the place making statements and trying to be politically correct, they're not going to take away fear from their supporters. They have to show their supporters that they are bold enough to confront those who have now become our enemies. You can't be my contemporaries or my opponents when you are bulldozing my house. You can't be my opponents when you are killing my sons. You can't be my opponents when you are charging my sons and daughters for terrorism. No, you've become my enemy. And the leaders have to go up front and to say, you are my enemy and you are oppressing my people and I'm putting my body on the line. Jail me quickly if you want. And that is how you remove fear from your people. When they see their leaders up front who will say, I am willing to make the sacrifice so that you take your damn dirty hands off of my people. And that is what Ogunse has done. And if they're ready to jail him, we are ready. Let them jail him. Let them jail him, because we believe that when they jail him, they're in for a rude awakening, because we will walk the length and breadth of Guyana to ensure that justice comes from the ground. If justice can't come from the courts, it must come from the ground. And that is what leaders must do. You must talk. You must talk when you're making your case. But having made your case, you don't have to prosecute your case. And the talk has to be a different talk. We are talking now.
Thank you, Dr. David Hines. Let's bring in Lincoln Lewis, who is joining us via phone. Lincoln, we have seen the persecution of so many persons, Roxanne Myers, Mingo, without any evidence. They're currently before the court almost 3 years now, Trevor Ben. And we look at the pattern. The key word tonight is the pattern of these 5 cents racists who are heading this installed PPP regime. The pattern. We see Lewin Field, Trevor Ben, and all these other folks who are faced with fictitious charges. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Every time they turn up at court, the evidence is not there. The prosecutors are not ready. Dr. Hines just spoke about the fact that we have leaders, particularly those in the opposition, who are not showing any inclination or willingness want to stand up for the people and even be locked up for the people or whatever. What is your take, sir?
Let me make this point that I started off by making the point that they are allowing the PPP to change the narrative for us. Our narrative not to be on the issue of we expect to lock up Ogunsi or we want to lock up the person. We know that we have to rally around those people. Our message must be if the atrocities that are being committed by this government, and over the last week or so, what we have done is allow them to determine the narrative. They start to talk about what Ogunsi said and what needs to happen and all this type of thing about Ogunsi. Ogunsi is not our problem. Our problem is this corrupt regime that we have that is prepared to sledge the people out, and we must focus on them. Let them do not allow them to determine the narratives in this discussion, and what we are allowing them to do. Nobody over the last week has come out to tell you about all the properties that are being, all the wealth, by way of properties that are being amassed by the cabal in the PPP and their friends. We need to do that. We need to work on things like that and bring it to the people here. We have to do it. Unless we can put the evidence in front of people, people are not going to be mobilized and get angry and want to fight. We have to do that. Do not allow the PPP to determine the agenda.
We should never allow oppressors to determine the agenda. Never should we allow that.
Mark, I want to disagree slightly with brother.
Go ahead, Dr. Hines. But before we go ahead, Lincoln, are you done?
Because I don't think we have allowed them to change the narrative. From the time Ogunse said the word, we have seized the narrative. They have to respond to us.
What Lincoln is
responding to us. Every day they're crawling out from their holes, responding to us.
One second. Dr. Hines. One second, Lincoln. Dr. Hines.
We are controlling the narrative.
Dr. Hines.
We are forcing them to respond to us.
Dr. Hines.
We are controlling the narrative.
Let us hear. Lincoln wants to add something to that. Go ahead, Lincoln. Yeah.
Look, over the last week, we stopped talking about the thievery that is taking place right in this society.
Because we're talking about fighting now, Lincoln. We're talking about fighting now. We've been talking about the thievery for 3 years. We're talking about a fight. No, we are not reacting. We have laid down the gauntlet at Buxton, and they are reacting.
Gentlemen. Go ahead, Doctor. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, I'm saying Ogunsi made this point.
No, he didn't make a point. He laid down the gauntlet.
What we have to do is to move on them. Continue the narrative. This man, these people are evil. And we have to deal with the evil people. What they've done is to say to us that Ogunsi is the evil one. And we switch from that and we defend him. We can't defend him. Let me move on. Talk about them. Talk to them about what they do. Talk to the nation about what they do. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
That's what we're doing. We're talking to the police.
Let me say this. Let me say this. For almost 3 years now, people have been persecuted. I'm now seeing the energy coming, of course, the WPA's energy, because Ogunsi being a WPA. And I have nothing wrong with that. And we can't give the PPP any sort of ammunition to go after anyone. But they have been going after people. Trevor Ben persecuted.
Yes.
Lowenfield persecuted. Roxanne Myers persecuted. We have Rhonda Lane persecuted. She has to pay a fine of $500,000 for freedom of speech. Others have been persecuted, but yet we allow the PPP to get away with that, and no response, none whatsoever. Dr. Hines.
Yes, they're thieves. Lincoln is right. They know they're thieves. We know they're thieves. The whole of Guyana know they're thieves. What are we doing about it beyond exposing that they're thieves? No, at some point we have to say thieves cannot come into our communities and beat us. We have to put our bodies as barricades against the thieves and the dictators. The narrative now has to shift from exposing and complaining to one of resistance in action. We have to move from resistance in words to resistance in words plus action. That is the significance of what Ogunsi has said. In 3 years, have you seen in 3 years, in 1 week, the president, the head of the army, the attorney general, the prime minister, the home affairs minister, have you seen them come out in 5 years? The reason they come out now, because they know we mean business. So, Brother Lincoln, business as usual, no more. No more complaining. No more crying. No more exposing. This is time to fight. And who want to be left behind complaining, stay there.
But
We
one
are
second,
moving
Dr.
forward.
Hines.
Fight.
Dr. Hines.
Yeah.
You're talking about fighting.
Yes.
You're talking about time to fight. Of course, the PPP is uncomfortable with that, and who cares what they're uncomfortable with?
That's right.
It also appears that the leader of the opposition is also uncomfortable with that, because according to a news report, he's not in favor of the language used by Mr. Tukuma Ogunsi. Your take, sir.
We're not asking people to agree with our language. We're not asking people to endorse what we say. We put a minimum barrier for the rest of the opposition. So long as you don't join with them and criminalize us, we okay with that. In terms of the language, our people understand the language. Whether the leaders understand or agree with the language, they have to work that out. Right?
Well, if it is correct, based on the report that Aubrey Norton, the leader of the opposition, is not agreeing with the language, he's basically saying to the PPP, look, I'm not with that. You know, in other words, do whatever you guys want, but I don't agree with the language, man. I don't agree with that. And I'm almost certain that there are elements in the opposition now who don't agree with this term, fight back. Let's bring in Lincoln Lewis before we get back to you. Lincoln.
Let me make this point. And I don't want to be misinterpreted. I want it to be very clear. Every day that we continue, the PPP wants us to flog the issue of Ogunsi and what Ogunsi says.
And we want them to. We want them to.
What I'm saying is that Ogunsi has made a statement. There have been reaction. It is time that we focus. We are not giving them any longer the opportunity to stymie what our program is. They even talk about what he perceives a program must be. Nobody is against a program of that nature, of mobilizing and fighting back. Right? But I'm saying that's what the focus should be. The focus must not be us talking every night about Ogun system. The PPP want us to do that. They want us not to talk about what they're doing. And if every day that we talk more about it is more
thieving. Thieving.
Good.
So what Lincoln is saying here?
What they say. We have to focus on what Ogunse say, because what Ogunse says is the alternative narrative.
Professor.
So we have to focus on what Ogunse said, because it's the alternative narrative.
Professor.
Ogunse represents resistance. Every day you're going to hammer that. Because he represents resistance.
The PPP understands what is being said.
Yes.
And the fact that I'll make that point later, but let me get to a point where there's seem to be a zealous supporter of Norton is saying here, Mark, I see what you tried to do there. You see, this is something that we've got to get to our folks. I basically asked a question because Aubrey Norton, according to a report, has said he doesn't agree with the language used by Takuma Gunsi. I am not the one who's saying that. It is Aubrey Norton who has said that, who is, according to the report, distancing himself from the language. So Naomi Drugger, I don't know if that's your drugger. Come on, let's be more sensible than that. I am not doing anything. I'm not saying anything. I merely ask because Aubrey Norton is the opposition leader. And if he has distanced himself from that language, it's only fair that a question be asked. What was wrong with what Ogunsi said? I don't know.
But Mark, in fairness to Aubrey, he has distanced himself from the language, but he has not distanced himself from the thrust of the message. And we have to be fair to him. He has distanced himself from the language, but not from the message.
What exactly in the language that he's distancing himself from? And he agrees with the trust of the message. What? It's kind of like an oxymoron thing. You put it on one side and
Mark, if you belong to, if you're the leader of a party like the PNC, you have about 4 or 5 different tendencies in that party to satisfy. So when Aubrey makes a statement like that, he's making a statement within the context of the party that he belongs to. I don't belong to that type of party. My party is a radical party, right? And we don't have all those factions to satisfy. Our position is clear. The only faction we have to satisfy is the people. And if the people, if our people say WPA is wrong, we will admit that we are wrong and pull back. But our people are saying that we are right, and that is what matters. And we're going to keep calling Ogunse's name and his message. With all due respect to Brother Lincoln, we're going to keep calling it every day because that's the prize. When you say Ogunse, the name Ogunse has a different meaning. No?
We got to call not just Brother Ogunse. We got to remember these brothers who are being persecuted, and not a word. We seem to have forgotten about them. We have not forgotten about them. Myers. We got to call their names every day. But what is surprising to me is words that are so innocuous uttered at a rally, at a meeting there by Mr. Gunsi, that the PPP is worried about. But yet, many years ago, the very PPP didn't have a problem with the likes, maybe, I don't know, some members of the WPA who, according to Dr. Rupert Rupner, was stockpiling weapons to violently overthrow the then PNC government. They didn't have a problem with that. In fact, they embraced the members of the WPA then with that allegations that weapons were being stockpiled, guns and grenades and so forth, to violently overthrow the PNC government. But now they have a problem with words being used to remind the members of the joint services as to who they are, and they should not be used as puppets, as pawns, as any illegitimate or corrupt regime. What's the difference then to now?
The difference is that the regime now is an Indian regime. That's the difference. It's okay to fight down a black government. It's okay. Rodney died in 1980. Rodney did not live to see black people house being bulldozed at Moko and Linden and Success and in front of the hospital. Rodney did not live to see a black woman being spat upon by an Indian bigwig. Rodney did not live to see a black lawyer being jailed for doing her job. Rodney did not live to see 90% of the oil money being given to others. And I'm sure if Rodney had lived to see these atrocities, his response would not be much different from mine and from Ogunsi.
All right, let's switch now. This regime, how would you rate this regime compared to Burnham's regime? In my opinion, Burnham looked like a schoolboy compared to these criminals in office. But your opinion?
He looked like a Sunday school boy compared to them. This is the most heinous, the most criminal regime in the history of Guyana and the English-speaking Caribbean. And I'm speaking not just as an opponent, as a scholar who has studied these things. This is the worst regime. And it is the worst regime because it is operating without constraints. At least Burnham used to worry about what the PPP and WPA will do. These days don't worry about what anybody will do. They don't worry about what the PNC will do. They don't worry about what the Americans and British will do. They don't worry about what, and they are a law unto themselves. And that is why we have appointed ourselves, as small a party as we are, to say, you're going to stop it. You will now, when you are moving, consider what the WP and the people of Guyana will do. And that is what we did in the last week. We have changed the narrative. Lincoln, they have to come out now and talk to us.
Let us get to this point. Lincoln, you want to make a point, because I do have a question concerning what the chairman of the CARICOM has said, that Ali is a man of integrity. CARICOM chair. Yep, I'm asking you because after all that's happening in the country, racial discrimination, political victimization, people being persecuted, so forth and so on, where is this chairman of CARICOM living, sir? But your opinion?
Well, I don't expect anything else from him. I had a colleague in the trade union movement, the CARICOM movement, a guy from Jamaica by Mike Goodley. We used to be a senator in the time of Michael Manley. And Goodwin said to me, he told me what happened in the Caribbean. He said when one government violates the laws and transgress people's rights, and you go to CARICOM, and CARICOM after the meeting will ask him why don't you do it? Because they will go back to the whole country and do it. It's a bunch of men and women who will do those type of things for us and to the citizens of their respective countries. So I'm not surprised that he said that he's a man of integrity. Let him come here and live the life that we live, and we'll know what I would say. He will speak to I will.
Dr. Hines, your take on what this guy, chair of CARICOM, is saying about Ali?
He's making a politically correct statement. If the government changes tomorrow and Norton take over, he will say the same thing about Norton. These chaps don't have political integrity. Well, so when he say Ali's a man of integrity, he's making a convenient statement. If the government changes tomorrow, he will say the new leader is a man of integrity. So you have to understand where these chaps are operating. They don't live in Guyana. They don't have to go through the problems that we are going through in Guyana. They are making politically correct statements. All we have to do is to smother those statements and counter those statements with the reality.
How true is this statement, Lincoln? I noticed someone has made a comment here, and I quote, "The PPP are emboldened by Exxon, the EU countries. They are the elephant in Guyana."
Yes,
Do
I
you
agree with that.
support that, Lincoln?
It could be yes, it could be no. But I want to tell you something. David made a point earlier about the PVP that there are a lot of people. These are people who have to respect rules, laws and integrity. They don't even regard to. When they talk about constitution and laws, they mean the ones that they want to respect. Or they want to impose something on you. That's what they think about. But let me come back to a point that I already did earlier. Let me point out to you. You spoke about little things that the government do. I'm saying to you that again, I still strongly believe that we should not allow the PPP to determine what we talk about. We must talk about what we want to talk about. And the PPP over the last has been able to use what Ogunsi said and allow us, lock us down, and we have not been able to carry consistently the old swap that we were carrying. And the focus is no longer on the PPP. The focus has now become Ogunsi, and it should not. Let us turn the focus on those people. What they have done, they have committed genocide, economic genocide against us. We have thousands of people that were killed. We're not talking about any longer. You know, we were talking the other day about the 2012 protests in England. You know what my young man said to me? He said to me, he's 18 years, 19 years of age. The young man said, no, about it, and he lived in England. Right? We have to keep these things going every day because the younger people who are coming in will be voting. Many of them are not conscious. Many people don't know that this COVID kill waddle. Many people don't know that Jack took Whistle took ancestral land and divided among his friends, them the cabal and the PPP. We have to talk about this. When we talk now about David made the point about bulldozing homes at Moko, right? Yes, they bulldoze all of Moko, but when you make the nexus, they started like taking away people land. Many people don't know that I went to court in the defense of the Marcos property and TV. For 17 months I've been going to court. Many people don't know that. What we're doing, we are allowing the government, the PVP, to really address the issue of determining what the message must be.
You know,
What the issue we
and we should
stop it. The PVP must not determine that.
The PPP doesn't have the intelligence to do that. They may have access to media houses and so forth, but they're a bunch of dummies. Let me say this, Lincoln and Dr. Hines. While we are talking about issues in Guyana affecting mainly ordinary citizens, a family out in Linden are mourning the death of a worker of Bosai. I have not heard any sort of word coming from the installed regime about that young man who lost his life, a man who dedicated himself to the bauxite industry, worker safety, and all these things. They're not being addressed at all. Dr. Hines, you're shaking your head. Why is it that these folks are so silent about these matters affecting, mainly persons of African descent in Guyana?
The value of the life of the African is not the same as the value of the life of other ethnic groups. The value of the life, the African life is devalued. And it's a value system that we have in this country. And I'm glad you raised that because that is not a direct political matter. It is a political matter nevertheless, because it goes to show the value of that life. Black lives do not matter in Guyana. we are dispensable. We are dispensable. Whether it is that young lady who's guarding that home while they sleep to ensure their safety, that they can sleep in peace, and they spit in our face, they should be bowing down and kneeling down to her. But what they do, spit in our face because her life doesn't have the same value. That young woman who is a lawyer, God bless her, she went to school, she studied hard, she's bright. But she does what all lawyers do, and what they do, put her in jail, because in their minds, she's a jailbird. The African is a jailbird. And so that African worker at Linden is just another worker who's been covered up by the malpractice of a company. And nobody is being brought to book. Just another black life. I tell you, Mark Benshaw, it gets me riled up. I am jealous as a black man. I don't play when it comes to this color. It's been 400 years. And they've been doing us the same thing. Bob Marley said 400 years and the same misphilosophy. And some of our political leaders are playing games with this color. They're prepared to sell this color for a few crossover votes. I am not. And I'm prepared to rally this country, if it's me alone, to say that you all black people, get off your bottoms and stand up like kings and queens of Africa and stop this goddamn impasse.
Kind of reminds me of what then President David Granger, still a legitimate president, because we have these illegitimate clungs in office, but David Granger said basically the same thing, addressing primarily African youths to go back, plant your farmland, occupy your farmland, and so forth. He was basically taken to task by some folks who felt that he was talking down to persons of African descent. Of course, I beg to disagree since then. But Lincoln Lewis, Lincoln, go ahead.
Let me tell you something. That mind that man was covered. I worked in the mine.
One second, Lincoln. You're talking about Bosai. You're talking about that man who lost his life. Let me say condolences to the entire family of that man on behalf of all of us here and all of our listeners. Go ahead, Mr. Lincoln Lewis. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, I work with that man. And the excuses that are being given for the covering of the man ought not to be accepted. Let me tell you what we expected. I thought they would have done. One man died at the top at Enmore. One man died at the packaging plant at Enmore. The packaging plant at Enmore. And the government of the PDP established a commission of inquiry to investigate on that issue. There ought not to be anything less than a full-blown commission of inquiry to what happened. We cannot understand, one cannot understand the excuse that the place was not illuminated very much. I worked in that mine. I knew how the roads used to be getting.
You know what is coming to mind, Lincoln, not to cut you, my friend. You know what is coming to my mind? That only in Guyana these things can happen. In Jamaica, all the workers would have shut, including all the union leaders and all of them would have shut that Bosai down until the wrongs are corrected and the family members of that man compensated. Lincoln, talk to me. What's happening?
Let me tell you what. I have seen in the past. I've seen an accident at Solomon Hill. One man died, and the entire operation came to standstill within more. Just getting messy that one man died by accident. This is safety was priority in the bauxite industry until it
Yep.
came to pocket. Rusal, not even an inquiry into it. All that they do is to threaten workers. If you strike, what will happen? If you do this, you go slow where you are. That is what they've been doing. But when it comes to this for the industry, anything happens there, you go with a high level of alacrity and you seek to put systems in place.
You know, absolutely. Absolutely different treatment with members. But remember that they tear gas sugar workers as well, they beat sugar workers. We were there across the river there, Lincoln, and I believe Dr. Hines, you were there as well, when they ill-treated those sugar workers. The PPPC under Jack Day and this guy Irfan, they're brutal to even their own supporters. So don't be fooled. But heading back to Russell, we know that Jack Day was in bed with these guys. In fact, that house that is on Foreshore Street there in Queenstown supposed to be a state asset, I'm told, because Jack Day used to live there. It was sold to Russell. And now Busa or Busa.
Let me tell you what they did. When Calvin London, as head of mission, put on the charges on them for commercial rent, when this government come to power, they reversed it.
Lincoln,
right?
the family members of this man that was killed in that so-called accident by Busa, they need compensation, they need justice, and I hope that the workers, the hundreds of workers, will dung tool, because it could happen to any one of them next. Any one of them, indeed. These are the sort of justice that we need to be fighting for against those sort of injustices. No company should head into Guyana and be allowed to get away with these sort of things. In no other part of the world they'll get away with it. But we have a regime, an installed regime, that doesn't give a damn about certain people's rights. And we don't give a damn about what we say and what we think about this illegitimate regime. Dr. David Hines, your closing remarks, sir.
Thank you again, Mark, for having me on here to express some views. And I always say when I come onto this program, or whenever I'm on my own program, that you're a pioneer of this form of communication. And I don't know where we would be, where the struggle would be, if it were not for these platforms. Brother Lincoln is telling us that we need to keep the issues on the front burner. Brother Lincoln should listen to some of these programs at night, and he will know that the issues that he's asking us to keep on the front burner are there on the front burner every single night, and that the WPA is continuing its public meetings to keep these issues on the front burner. We're going to be in Victoria on Sunday night. And so I want to say game change. Game change. After Ogunse's utterances, game change. We have moved up a little notch. Brother Lincoln, you got to run and catch up with us, right? We are not just complaining anymore about how thieving they are. We are going for the thief in hand. That's what you got to catch up with us, Brother Lincoln. You're a little bit behind, right? The game has changed. We are now talking about what they're doing, but we're talking with a stronger voice. We are talking with a clearer voice. We're talking with the voice of our people, and we are talking with the voice of the ancestors. Because for too long, for 3 years, we have been talking, and nobody has been listening. And now they're listening. Now they're listening. Every day they're coming out, shaping the narrative. They're responding to the narrative of the African ancestors in the form of their sons and daughters. The first time. It's our narrative, not their narrative. And it's the narrative of resistance. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome, because some leaders are prepared to fight. Some leaders are prepared to bare their chest and say, shoot me. Some leaders are prepared to do as Martin Carter said, jail me quickly. If they want to make Takuma Ogunse the martyr of this phase of our revolution, let them go ahead. We are willingly delivering him to them. make him the martyr of this phase of our revolution. There's one organization in this country, one organization in Guyana holds no fear, no fear. All the fearful people are dead as far as we are concerned. You must be a people of courage, courage. And that's where we are now. We are the crossroads where we are crossing the river from fear to courage.
Thank you, Dr. David Hines. The people have been waiting in terms of some sort of response in terms of getting out of where they are under this corrupt PPP regime. Almost 3 years ago, we heard, Biden administration is going to deal with them. That is 3 years ago. We heard that the game changed then. We heard that the U.S. State Department will grab them. When I'm off this show, I just gotta pray that we are seeing a bigger light at the end of the tunnel, because the people of Guyana, and I speak on behalf of almost every single Guyanese, not just Guyanese of African descent. There are lots of Indian brothers and sisters who are being oppressed, but they are afraid to speak out because of where they live, and their neighbors may probably burn their houses down or whatever. They are feeling the squeeze. Rice farmers are feeling the squeeze. Sugar workers are feeling the squeeze. Market vendors are feeling the squeeze. Bauxite workers are feeling the squeeze. All Guyanese are feeling the squeeze. It's just a matter of time. And I've said this to some folks today. Guyana is a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. Lincoln Lewis, your closing remarks, please, sir.
Let me say to you that the struggle will have to continue. We cannot at any point retreat. My concern, and I want to take my position very clear, I am not interested in what the PPP says about Martin. I am not interested in what the PPP says about Ramchatan. I am not interested in what they say about Ubuntu. As far as I'm concerned, the beam, the light must always be on them. But they have been placed in a position. They're putting the levers of power, and we must always hold them accountable at every step in the way. We must not forget anything that they do. And we must make sure that the society is aware of the transgressions that are taking place, the violation of laws, and the process of economic genocide that they have been and they are continuing to execute. We have to do it. We can't do otherwise. They must not be given any opportunity to determine what will be discussed. The message must be ours to the people. Or we must not join the message. We must not join the chorus. We must not be defending anything. We must be on the attack. And that is what ought to be done. Thank you. Good night. And I'll talk with you guys another day.
Thank you so much, Lincoln Lewis. Appreciate your contributions. We appreciate your commitment. We appreciate you being part of the struggle for a very, very long time, and we wish you good health. And hopefully that we will see you there in Linden, probably asking those workers to come out and protest and shut that company down, to demand compensation for the man who lost his life, and to demand justice for the family members, and by extension to all of the workers as well. Thank you, Lincoln. Thank you. Dr. David Hines, I thank you so much as well. I thank all of our listeners for being part of this program this evening. And we will be back tomorrow, same place, same time. You've noticed that in a democracy, we don't necessarily agree on everything, but it's how we respect each other's views. That is a democracy. something that we believe in. And we have demonstrated that on these shows. Unfortunately, the PPP, the installed PPP regime, is very intolerant, extremely intolerant in opposing views. They are against freedom of speech. They are basically practicing what is called an apartheid system in Guyana. We see who these contractors are. We see who the people are getting richer and richer every day. We see the people who are getting deals upon deals. We see the people who are building big houses in the form of possibly washing monies and all these different things. We see them. We know who they are. And so this kleptocratic regime cannot run and hide themselves in a manner as though they're innocent, as though they're angels. They're not. They're a bunch of convicts. They're a bunch of criminals who are running this regime in favor of their friends and cronies and families and so forth. And people who do speak out against them are being labeled as terrorists, are being labeled as racist, and all manner of things. Speaking and preaching racism and preaching violence and all these things. No evidence at all. And look at the set of people they're targeting. Just look. The evidence is quite clear. And again, I say that the PPP needs to get its act together. Guyana is a ticking time bomb. And if the time bomb is to explode, have a good night, guys. God bless you all. And pray for that country. It's in the wrong hands. Wrong set of people who every day are committing treason. They're selling Guyana out for 20 pieces of silver to their friends and cronies and individuals who by 3, 4, 5 years are gone, don't give a darn about the country. And those overnight individuals who suddenly get rich and are getting richer and richer with hundreds of millions of dollars of contract, and with big guns and gunmen around them, love you guys. God bless you all. See you tomorrow. Same place, same time, right here on 107.1 FM.
So, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
Mr. Mark, I believe every word of what Mr. Shu is saying. I am also afraid of Mr. Shu. Mr. Shu, if you are listening, I don't want anybody to harm you. This is a serious thing. Corruption is big. And we Chinese have to stop that. Been bullied by Jack Dale and other government officials to pay bribe. It's big all over Guyana. A Chinese to pay by bribe. Mr. Shu, I hope you to stay strong. Do not. We respect and salute you for your bravery, for coming up and speak against corruption in Guyana. Thank you, Mr. Shu. We appreciate you, Mr. Mark. 马克，我相信每一句苏先生说的话。我现在很担心苏先生。 苏先生，如果你在听我说话，我不想任何人威胁你。圭亚那政府腐败很严重，这个是很严重的事情。我们中国人必须停止被那些政府用武力行贿。苏先生，我希望你能继续你的发表，也希望你在新的一年万事如意。
Basement level vibes with another one, straight up blackness. Aye, who tell the truth? Mark Scott, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Scott, radio station is the fruit. Mark Scott, straight up from the root. Mark Scott, who tell the truth? Mark Scott, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Scott, radio station is the fruit. Mark Scott, straight up from the root. Mark Scott, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up my family. Turn on the radio, catch the vibes, it's integrity. Straight up, Scott stands for unity. One people, one nation, one destiny. Free up the truth in the air, even the blind can see. The deaf can hear, the dumb can talk, the cripple can walk. Boom. Who tell the truth? Mark Scott, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Scott, radio station is the fruit. Mark Scott, straight up from the root. Mark Scott, who tell the truth? Mark Scott, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Scott, radio station is the fruit. Mark Scott, straight up from the root. Mark Scott, we have to gather round, grab a seat and sit down, pay attention. Education, liberation, we have to stand strong. Ben Scott upon the radio, lively up the program. Everybody call somebody and let them turn and tune and on the radio and catch the boom song. We boom it up already, we have to boom it up again. Expose and reveal him. Who tell the truth? Mark Scott.